Well, hello again. Welcome to part two of document notifications. And we're going to look in part two about how users actually use document notifications to send documents out. So obviously they have to upload documents and they have to upload them to contracts. But before they do that, they need to make sure they've set up their parties correctly because they need to tell the system who they're going to notify to. So let's take an example of a contract, and let's take an example of an insurance contract that has delegate authority. So it's an outsource contract, and that's given to a certain entity. And behind that entity are a load of syndicates who make up the contract, who actually provide the insurance capacity. So it's a three-way relationship that we're managing here. So in theory, one party, the primary party, the cover holder, would provide documents every month, and these need to be notified through to the insurers. So let's go and look at the parties first of all, so we get a clear view of that. So obviously parties are pillars in Dellegance. They're one of the key roles, as are contracts. So we always perform actions around parties and contracts and people. So the entity who is providing the information is an entity called Northern Underwriters, which is obviously a made-up entity. And they're in a contractual relationship, and they have a contract, and the relationship they're in on that contract is with some syndicates, in fact. So let's have a look at a dummy syndicate here, and they are just another party. Now they have a different role in the system. So whereas our principal is called a cover holder, which is a generic term in insurance for someone who has that sort of underwriting delegation given to them, an insurer is someone who provides the capacity and makes the other end of that contract. So there we go. So they're set up as a role of insurer, and therefore these are the people who we want to provide the information to. So the first thing we have to do is actually set up where that information is going to be sent. As you can see, I already have one email address sent in there. I'm going to set up another one just to show you using the standard email address I probably use all the way through here. And this is where their claims bordereau gets sent. This just gives it's just a description so you know what that relates to. And the service, because obviously parties can have more than one service. They could have multiple functions in your organization. You only want to set them up once, but they're acting as an insurer here, so there's only one available. And what document? Well, we've said let's give them claims documents, which are claims bordereau in the document type. So remember, you should only really choose document types here that fall under contract, because if they fall under elsewhere, they won't be able to get them. So let's add that mail address in, and we'll use that a bit later on. You'll see how that works through. So let's go now to a contract, and I've got a dummy contract set up, and it's set up to our friends Northern Underwriters. So let's load that one up. And this is where we're going to store our documents, because the documents belong to this contract. So that's the perfect logical place to store them. And as you can see here, we've got our syndicate set up. They're insurers. That's the principal, who's the primary party, and actually there's a fictitious claims handling operation set up there as well, which again in Dellegance allows you to have this three-way or multi-way relationships, and for people you keep one place for all these interactions. So the first thing we need to do is set up a document notification. So because it's enabled, you're going to see this tab. If document notifications are not enabled by your administrator, you simply won't see this tab, and give them a shout to switch it on for you. So let's set up notification for this party. So click the add notification box, make it active so it actually runs. Let's give it a name. So we'll call this claims bordereau monthly. Excuse me, monthly. And we know the document type is going to be a claims bordereau. You'll notice immediately it tells us down here that pre-approve is required for this document type. So when do we expect to receive our first document? Well, let's assume it's a 12-month contract. Let's say that every month for 12 months we get 2 documents. So we won't get the first one. They're not due to give us the first document. Let's say it's a 1st November contract in 2018, this particular one. So actually we expected our first contract to be in December. And that's going to carry on for 1 month after the expiry. In this particular case, it could be actually 24 months, depending on how you've set the contract. So actually the last one's going to come at the end of December. And within that period, we expect 2 documents a month. We've got 2 sections. and it's the qualifier there, as you can see, it's at monthly. So we expect 2 documents each month. Now this is very different from the triggering. This is what you expect to get from your client to pass on to the underwriters in this particular example we're using here. So you expect 2 documents a month, starting in November 2018 and finishing in December 2019. In fact, that should probably be better if it was December. So there we are. So for a year, we expect 2 documents a month. And that's it. That's all you have to set up. So we'll add that in there and refresh. And it reminds us to don't forget to add the email addresses to who you're going to send it. Well, that's a pretty important thing. You can see that it's been set up automatically. It knows the document type. It knows we need approval to go through every time we add a document. So let's add an email address. And we have 2 available from the parties set up under this contract. So you can give them a unique reference. I don't know what that might be, but you might have a unique reference. Let's save that in there. And let's add another email address, which would be the other one. Let's give them a unique reference. And it's updated it from a short name. The first one obviously didn't have a proper short name set up. And that is now set up to run. So that means at the trigger point each month, if we've added documents in that haven't yet been notified, it will automatically send them out to those email addresses at the trigger point. And if you trigger it twice a month, you add them in at different times, it doesn't matter, it'll run twice a month as a trigger. And that's what I think we set the document type to, as opposed to how many documents in our document account we actually expect to get. And that's useful because then we can say for each month, did we get the documents we were expecting? So that is the notification size set up. So as a user, that's all you have to do. And then when you add documents, which I'll show in a second, it gets extremely easy to then say notify this document. So let's add a document now. Some dummy documents stored in the system just to add straight in. So let's select the document or drag and drop it. Let's give it a title. Let's call it the Jan 2019 Claims Bordereau. And we know the document type, of course. And if it's a January document, well, I suppose we would probably say it relates to everything up to the 31st of January. So that will give that as a document date. So it'll track it as a January document. And we'll say that's the notification type. Let's upload the file. So that file's uploaded. As you can see, it's set as notifiable, it says unapproved, and also it's given us a message it's been sent for approval. So let's go and have a look at approval, and we'll trigger this manually. There's some other videos on approvals, but we can just trigger this one manually to show you the change. So let's go and load up approvals. Here you'll see the approvals being created automatically. You can see the 2 approvers who are meant to give permission for this. But as I said, we'll override this and we'll set a manual decision and approve this document. So I'm going to hit the manual button. I'm just going to hit approved, and I'm just going to confirm that that approval process was run and the document was approved. Right, you can see the document was approved, and the approval outcome document was created and put into the system, confirming what was done. And there's a link to the original document. You can see that it went through the approval process. And you'll also notice in the Documents tab, even on the approvals, it now says it is notifiable and it has been approved. So now automatically it will go into the next approval cycle. And your job as a user is done. You've added the document. It's been for approval. Someone else has approved it. It's now in the queue to be notified as per the triggers we set up against the document type. So now let's go back to the contract and have a look. In the meantime, I have run manually the notification process, so we'll see some slightly different results when we get back to the contract. So let's go and look at the documents themselves. And you'll see they've all been shown as approved, those 2 documents. And under notifications, you can see that the notification ran today manually. But the good report under document notifications to see what you've sent out is just on the toolbar here. And I'll run that report, and that shows you for this contract exactly the notifications you've done to date. So it's given a little summary there. It says how many have I got to date. I've done one for each of those 2 months because we said there's a monthly period. And you'll notice that there are the 2 documents repeated, but to each email address where they were sent. So we obviously set it up with 2 different email addresses, even though it was for the same party. So that's very useful. You can see immediately at a glance what's going on in the contract and what you've sent out and who you've sent it to. But if I now go to our dummy syndicate, which was syndicate 999, and I go to the party and actually go and look at documents, you'll see that it's actually created and saved a copy of the email with those documents on. So again, you've got an audit trail there, and that you turn on and off in your document notifications, in your document types, if you remember from the previous video. So lastly, let's have a look at a few other bits of reporting that are useful for you to know. So we're going to go to the dashboard. And in the dashboard, you've got, because the document notification for that contract is enabled, you will now see documents where it thinks we had a frequency we expected to see per month. We did expect to see, if I remember correctly, 2 per month. And you'll see for that contract, it's saying, well, since the contract started, 2 per month. Some months I've got none, and some months I've only got 1 document. I was expecting the users to put in 2 a month for that document type, and those documents be notified. So this is a visual indicator, contract by contract. You see it actually groups up each contract by its reference, and it'll just show you your users where they're failing to meet the criteria for document notification by document type. So it's a very useful tracker for your users to make sure they do actually get the documents in. And as usual, you can output that as a PDF. Little button on the top left of the toolbar there, so that'll come out as a formatted PDF for you if you need to work off that list. And finally, there's a report in the main reporting side under documents. Let's just load that up. I'll go to the documents tab. The report is called contract documents notifications, and you have some parameters to select. So you need to choose all notifications before a certain date. So we've got today's date, and it'll look up a year before that. So notifications after. So it's slightly, you've got to think of it the other way around. So one's a before date, one's an after date. And if I select the individual syndicate that we want to look at there, the report will run. And you can see there, let's just make that full size for you. The report basically splits it's for all contracts that syndicate is a party and linked to. So it'll actually show the history, the complete history of that party for all documentations, notifications between those dates as a historical output. So maybe you'd want to show that to that person and say, look, we sent you all this stuff and you should have it. It's that sort of report, but it's specific to a single party. So that's quite a useful thing to have. I hope you found this session useful. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and get the latest updates and all the new tutorials as they come out. If you're new to Dellegance, go to dellegance.com and find out why you should be using Dellegance today.